I think it was the first time that I was legitimately going to do something that I didn't care what it looked like for Dylan Ledbetter at all. Like I told my girlfriend, it's like I almost wanted to remove my name from the bib because I didn't even want to be a part of the race. Just like, just use me. You know what I mean? And this is what we talked about earlier, where like it could be for something like you're the machine, right? Like that's all I wanted to just be the vessel. That's it. For anybody, for Jesus Christ, number one. But for anybody that can't do it or doesn't think they can do it, that's what I want to represent in this. And this is a week out, and this is my dream race for 3 years. Dylan wanted the buckle. Dylan wanted to go to Cocodona 250. Dylan wanted to tell people he did Cocodona 250. And we're a week out, and now Dylan doesn't even want his name attached to the race anymore.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Rhythms and Roots podcast. And I want to just start off with this. There's a moment in endurance or racing or running, maybe just in life itself, that performance itself sort of just disappears. The goals disappear, the image disappears, the adrenaline sort of disappears, and eventually you're stripped down to something that you're not sure if you're going to be able to take another step or mile or whatever it is. And it's in that moment that I feel personally that I meet myself and I meet the depth of who I am, my character, but I also meet the God of the universe in those spaces. That's where the intimate part of relationship with God for me actually comes into play the most, is when everything is stripped away. Paul would even talk about this in the scriptures where he said, I want to run with perseverance, that I would strip away everything so that I might follow you, right? And that's paraphrased, but this is not the version of yourself that you often project online or that people would often applaud the most, but this is the real people that we are underneath all of that. When suffering starts to take place, suddenly we're exposed in a place that hopefully we want to let that person be at the forefront of our image and what we want to put out there to the world. And maybe that's why people are drawn to hard things. I don't know. My last podcast that I had here, we talked about that. Why do people do hard things? It's a huge question. Like, why do we push ourselves to places where we're not sure if we can take another step? And I think the answer, the quick answer, at least for me, is that helped shape really who we are. Years ago, I photographed Sir Edmund Hillary, who was one of the very first people to ever climb Everest. And I photographed him in downtown Denver. And right before I photographed him, I asked the infamous question, probably everybody has asked that guy over his lifetime. And I just said, why did you climb Mount Everest? And he looked at me and he said, well, it's already been said before, but I'm going to take it too. And he said, because it's there. And if it's there, I'm going to do whatever I can to climb it. And that was how he chose to climb Mount Everest. And I think often for me, I've only done a 50 miler and want to do more. And I've done a lot of running since 2006. I've been running for a very long time, but there's something about it that when it's there, you want to overcome it. But we want to overcome a lot of things in life, sometimes the hardest things in our life. So today's conversation isn't just about running or endurance. It's also about faith and identity and pain and formation and what happens when there is actually nothing else left in you or nowhere to hide. Once again, welcome back to the Rhythms and Roots podcast. I'm Donnie Hinshaw, and this season is called Formed, Becoming Whole in Our Body, in Our Soul, in Our Calling. And one of the refrains that we actually keep returning to is this: the life that you're actually living, and I would say this, the life you're living today, right now, is actually forming and transforming you into the person that you'll become. So whatever you try to tackle or accomplish, whatever you do today is forming you into the person that you're trying to become or are becoming, whether you like it or not. So today's guest is an ultra runner by the name of Dylan Ledbetter. Many people know Dylan maybe through the ultra running community and even recently with a race that he just completed, which I'm so excited to talk to him about. He just completed the Cocodona 250. Now, if you don't know what the Cocodona 250, it's basically Coca-Cola and donuts for 250 miles, right? But he has a journey in ultra running and a story that is so powerful. And I'm hoping to just kind of let him go and share and talk about his journey in ultra running. And what I appreciate most about Dylan is his honesty and openness about his faith. And this conversation isn't simply about the miles or the races or even what suffering necessarily is, but what suffering might actually strip away and how faith is the very thing that often sustains us if we allow it. So Dylan, welcome to the Rhythms and Roots podcast. I am so grateful. We just met online. I followed you on this race, and the things that you were saying outside of the race are the things that made me want to talk to you more than anything. It wasn't so much about the things that everybody else is saying, because they're all saying it. Look at my feet. You know, this is what I ate at this aid station. And all those are really valuable. I think that's important, and I want to know that stuff too. But the things you say were things like, when I was suffering, I just kept saying to myself, if Jesus can suffer on a cross, I can go another mile, or whatever it was, however you put it. And I just said, I'm going to take a shot at seeing if this guy will be on the podcast. And honestly, I felt like I'm a little out of my league, because you're on a lot of podcasts now coming, and you did so well on that race, like amazing. And just another thing I want to throw out there, Dylan is a veteran, and I want to say thank you to your service to our country. I'm sure there's even stuff in there that teach you a lot about endurance and faith and all that stuff. So Dylan, welcome to the show, and I'm grateful that you're here. So I'd love to begin with your story. So before the races, before Cocodona, before all of this, what first drew you toward like endurance and ultra training? And you can go back as far as you want, like share whatever is on your heart.
Yeah, thank you, Donnie. Thank you for having me on, and to the guests, thanks for listening. I'm just here to share my experiences the best that I can. That's just the goal. Yeah, if we look at, where I was first drawn to endurance and really athletics or doing the hard things, like I think it goes all the way back to in high school when I was just on a wrestling team. Wrestling can really forge some disciplines into you, and you could be mediocre at it and maybe not, put the work in. But I know that, we were in three sweatshirts and two pairs of sweats, and when everybody else goes and gets water, me and like two or three other guys, we're still drilling, we're still working, and you're all just trying to make it to the state tournament in California. This is like the first thing I can think of when I think of I put in like extra work. I wanted to work hard, and those days forged me. And I didn't even meet my goal in high school. I didn't make it to the state tournament. I didn't get there. But even doing it and failing, I think taught me as I moved throughout my life that, hey, we could have put in more work, but it's there. The foundation was set, I think, around that time. Moving through other things like my parents' divorce, I think that's always forged things through me. Just as a child, if you've went through any sort of traumas, my mother was an addict to drugs and alcohol who passed away when I was 15. These things forge, like you said, Donnie, who you become. When I was 12, I didn't know that was going to be something that I think about when I'm 31 and I'm 187 miles deep in a but not to say it's a good thing, but to have it to call back to when my legs can't move, to remember what I went through when I was 12 and 15 years old, losing my mom. Like, I move much better after that comes to the forefront of my mind. Like I tell this to anybody, like when you're in a hard time, and this doesn't have to be running, it doesn't have to be legs, it could be your daily life, whatever's going on. But most of us have something we can call back to that's traumatic enough that can trigger you to work forward in whatever moment you're in, So I don't wish anything I've been through upon anybody, but I wouldn't change it. And I've said this before, I'd go through it again if it meant that I end up right here where I'm at right now, because
So true. So
and
true.
yeah, so it's like I said, these things are hard, but the more I talk about them, the more they give me strength now. Where for a long time, alcohol suppressed a lot of these things for me. We just didn't bring it up. We didn't talk about it. We didn't use it for any motivation. Almost could use it as a way to say, oh, well, this happened to me, and that's why I'm this way. That's why I'm acting poorly, is because when I was a kid, this happened to me. Now I've reversed it completely. Like, this happened to me, and it's given me pure strength. And so those are things in my childhood that set a strong foundation for just what's it look like to move forward. What's that look like? And then moving into the military, I joined the military just as a gap. I wanted to be a correctional officer, had to be 21, so 18 to 21, I can fill that 3-year gap. It ended up I was there for 8.5 years.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
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 And while in the military. I was in the 82nd Airborne, so I jumped out of planes for a little while, stuff like that. So a little bit of adrenaline, early on. And then I went to what's called a Sapper Leader course, which is a 28-day
I
course,
saw that.
similar to Ranger. Yeah, similar to the Ranger Leader course, just on the engineer and demolitions, like specific. So using more explosives and things like this. But a lot of like, little sleep, a lot of movement, mini missions, carrying heavy rucksacks, a very high attrition rate. I think that we started with 51 and graduated 14. So, things like, Cocodona where 64% of the field made it. Like that's large to me, in some of the things that
Man,
I've
no
done,
kidding.
but still hard. And the best sapper competition I did one year. So I think that's probably where my endurance starts, is in things like that, competing in 12-mile ruck marches, all through the military. I just love to compete, just not always for the right reasons. In the military, I was doing everything for me. Everything was to stamp my name on it. I want you to know who I am. I want to be seen. I want to be heard. And I'm gonna do that with my actions, a little bit with my mouth as well, especially when I was young. The military gives you great things. It also can give you a little bit of an ego, can give you a little bit of some narcissistic traits if you allow it to, and most of us, in my experience, have given into that type of personality.
I got something to say about that because, like,
Go ahead.
as a military photographer, combat photographer in the United States Air Force, I flew in planes. I just wasn't dumb enough to jump out of them. Like, I used to always tell you guys, like, as I'm sitting in the back of a C-17 with the doors open and you guys are flying out the back of it, I would say, I don't know who's dumber here. This is a perfectly good plane. But my brother also served in the military. He was in the Army in the 9th Infantry Division as a Ranger. And I remember when he went in, and he's older than me, but he would always say, like, when he was in Korea, they would go on these long ruck marches, or whatever. And he said, I'd come back and he said, I'd have like trench foot and I'm putting stuff all over my feet and all this stuff. And I said, what are you learning through all that? And he said, I'm learning that your body is a machine. It's just a machine. And he's like, if your mind's strong enough, your body will actually do what your mind tells you to do. And he said, it'll break down and you can still keep going. He said, and he said, I don't necessarily think that's always a good thing. He told me sometimes, like, I feel like the Army knows that my body's a machine and they treat me like a machine rather than a human at times, but that's the military. But it does teach you some of those things. And because you have that machine like mindset, you can come out of it, like you just said, and allow it to be a narcissistic thing and cause you to be a little bit bigger in your head than you really should be, and the scriptures don't teach that, like,
Yeah.
that our strength is found in our weakness. It's not found in our strength, so, but yeah, that's so cool. It's really, really cool to hear you say all that about the military and what it teaches you, because it does, but it's got some negative side effects too, right?
Yeah. And I also didn't
Yeah.
know the scriptures. I wasn't religious, and I attempted.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've told anybody this, but I attempted to read the Bible in 2015, and I was in Iraq, so I don't know if that's the right place to start reading the Bible. But I didn't.
Babylon.
I wasn't seeing. I was seeing a third world country, which if you haven't viewed that before, it can kind of skew your mind on what you thought the world was. The terrible
Yep.
things that are happening, just the life in general in those areas, it's unexplainable. Really, like, you can't grasp it unless you see it. And when you see it, you almost don't believe that it's real, but then you're seeing like a different side of the world that you didn't know. And I came into the Bible with a terrible mindset, just almost wanting to disprove, right, what it was. And so then I'm reading only the Old Testament. I don't even get far in it. And I'm like, all this is fairy tales, it's stories. Like, I'm not believing any of this because I don't know anything about the covenant. I'm not studying. I'm just reading, right? I'm just reading words on a piece in a book. And so I fell almost completely out of faith into, like, I didn't have any faith to start with, but if I was going to, it did not come to fruition in this moment. More the opposite, where I pretty much denied it, and I was an atheist, I would say. Not really outwardly, like, I'm not over here, denouncing the Bible across social media or anything like that. It's just like, hey, I don't believe in any of that stuff, man. I'm sorry. It's just what it is. And yeah, it took me, like I said, so we went all the way through the military like that. I got out in 2021, just some back injuries. I was trying to be a Green Beret, special operations, and in training for that, I hurt my back once. Had to I needed physical therapy and all sorts of stuff. So I got retrained, got back up, and then hurt it again. And I was like, I just need. I lost all my motivation to be in the military. I didn't want to put on the uniform anymore. I didn't want to train my soldiers anymore. And that's when I knew, like, it's time for me to get out. Like, I'm not serving the people anymore, you know? And
Right.
luckily I was self-aware enough to do that. Rather, a lot of people just, they stick it out, you know? They're like, oh, I got 11 and a half years left till I get my retirement. Like, I'll just keep coming to work. And those people turn into bad people and really bad leaders that
I
soldiers then
agree.
have to deal with. And then good soldiers get out of the army because bad leaders stayed in the army, you know? And, so I didn't want to be that guy. I saw way too much of that. And I loved my soldiers. I go to bat for them. I get in trouble for them, you know, because like that's my job. I felt like I'm their servant, right? Sergeant means servant. And
Hmm.
so I always lived up to that. And so, yeah, I got out and I swore off running when I got out. The military forced me to run for a long time, ruck march, all these things. I was good at it, but I did not enjoy it for reasons we'll talk about in a second. But I just, the forced thing, you know, it was, you know, not voluntary running. You run because you have to run. And I ran because I wanted to compete, you know, and that's really about it. So we get out and started drinking more. I didn't really have a job. I didn't have a purpose. And so that's what got stripped from me. When I removed from the military, my purpose was removed from me completely because that was the only thing that I knew was the military. So now to try to restructure my life and find purpose in what we call the civilian world as, you know, military people was very tough and I couldn't figure it out. And I just didn't know what to do. And I got a job like at the Montgomery County. It's where I work now, but like I still wasn't working with a purpose. I was just working because I have to have a job, you know. And was working on baseball fields, and I had a friend that lived with me, and he passed away in a motorcycle accident. You know, one of my best friends, my roommate, just doesn't come home one night. You know, just one of the worst things. And I only coped with that with alcohol. I went to both of his funerals. I met his family through this. I
Wow.
spoke at both of his funerals and I drank at both of his funerals. You know, I didn't know how to deal with these kinds of things, you know, and the only thing that I ever knew through my family, through myself, through my friends was like, oh, you know, you just have a shot, you know what I mean? Ease it, you know, that'll take the anxieties away, you know, and that's what happened. Like, that's just what it was. And I can sit here and regret it all day long, but that's just, you know, how the cookie crumbled at that time. I wasn't ready to transform yet. And so we worked through that. And then about a year later, I'm reading David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. I cannot remember for the life of me why I was reading this book or how it got recommended. I'm sure I saw a Goggins clip, and I mean, I know I needed help. Like, I was not in the best shape of my life. I was not doing well. I was not doing good things.
Hmm.
And this book, like I said, I tell people all the time, if you haven't read it, like, it almost seems cliche because everybody seems to have derived something from this dang book. And I'm like, dude, just
Hmm.
read it. Just give it a shot. You know, like people like, I hate that. I don't want my story to be surrounded by it. I'm like, just let it be that way. It's what it is. You know, the guy, take or leave what's good or bad about him, but there's a lot there that can help you,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm reading the
And
book
mine
and
was Dean Karnaz's book too. Like, both of those books did that to me, like big time, where he was just struggling physically with so many things, and then all of a sudden just went out one night in his full clothes and just ran. And he just
yeah, it
ran, and he
quit.
just kept running.
It seems unbelievable, right? That like you can just like click over and become a new
Yeah,
person. But if you read books like Dean's or Goggins, like it's there, the blueprint's there, the data's there.
totally there.
And that's just in books. Like there's thousands and millions of people that have done it. I'm one of these people. Like we're about to flip that switch. And but you know, so I'm reading that book and the challenge, the 4x4x48 comes across, which if anybody doesn't know, you run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. So plenty of time to run the miles. It's just about getting back out there and doing it. It's just kind of a challenge to test like your mental fortitude. Can you keep answering the bell? You know, most of us, if you're in any type of shape, you can run 48 miles across 2 days. It's going to be hard, but you can do it most likely.
Hmm.
This was in February. I read the book. I decided on Easter weekend, which also at this point was my buddy's death anniversary, right? I don't know what to call that, anniversary of his death. So it worked out good. I had time. I had 2 months or so to train. Also, I'm just now realizing that this was on Easter, which is really funny because I wasn't a Christian at this time, but
You just figured that out.
I just figured that out. Yeah, and I
Oh
told
my
this story
goodness.
a million times. I just figured that out. See, Donnie, you're helping me here. You're helping me.
My
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah, it's how
I'm
intentional.
pastoring you right now.
how intentional is God, and we're going to get into even more of it, but this just adds to it. How great. And so we knocked that out. I had to do it for my friend. That was the whole point, is that we were supposed to do it in Korea in 2020, me, him, and a group of some people. And so I
Wow.
read this in Goggins' book and I'm like, I've got to do this for Alex. You know what I mean? Like this is what I have to do. So we train, we knock it out. And I did every single 4 miles was like for some sort of association that I donated money to, or like a group of individuals.
Hmm.
Or like, one was for, Staff Sergeant Alexander White himself, things like that. Everything was dedicated to somebody. But we do that. And in training for that, I ran a half marathon. But like I said, if you're fit enough, a lot of people can run a half marathon. I was 28, only 2 years removed from the Army. I was still in decent shape.
For
3
sure.
weeks, 2 or 3 weeks after that, I ran a full marathon. And this is where that pain and suffering we talk about, that hitting that wall, it's the first time it happened to me. Even in the 4x4x48, it was pretty dang smooth. But
Hmm.
the marathon, when I hit mile 21 or so, like
And
I
that's it. And they
could
say it's
not.
like, that's what
Yeah.
and they tell you. I remember when somebody told me that, I'm like, oh, whatever. And I hit mile 21, like, there it is, and it's hard on a marathon because you're on pavement generally. You're running faster because it's all time based. And that 21st mile, man, hits you like a ton of bricks. It's crazy. Yeah,
Yeah, it
it's really
wrecked me.
crazy.
And all I wanted to do was not walk. I was running 11:40s, which for me is like, it's just like inconceivable that I would even have to run that slow ever for anything, and but we were just chugging along. But like, and then I couldn't walk afterwards. Like I had to have somebody come pick me up from the marathon. I couldn't believe that something could break me off like this easily. It felt like, I had
Mm,
no idea that that could occur. Um, and then so that happens, and I'm like, this pain is something like I need to dominate this. Like I need
mm,
to overcome it. That was the thing with it. It's like, okay, if this broke me off, it means that, I mean, all these other people finish in front of me. So like, it's not like I can't do it. You know what I mean? We're
mm.
just going to have to actually have a training block, and you can't just go out and do whatever you want to accomplish things like this. Grit can only get you so far.
Right.
And
Grit and good
then,
looks.
well,
Grit
yeah,
and good
something.
looks only going to get you so far.
Yeah.
That's what my dad used to always tell me.
21 miles might be the buffer.
Man.
Yeah, and then I see a trailer for the Mid-State Mile, and this is an ultra marathon that's an hour away from me, and this is a trailer for a documentary for it. I've never heard of an ultra marathon in my life. I don't know anything about this. So then I wanted to train for it. There's the Strolling Gym, if anybody knows what that is. It's like a 40-mile road race. I was
Mm,
signed up for that. I was like, I can't do 40 miles. I had to drop it down to the half marathon. I like emailed Steve Durbin to get it dropped down, because after 26, I was like, there's no way. Was done at 20, so 40 is not
mm.
going to happen. So I dump it down to a half marathon about a month and a half out from Mid-State Mile, and I signed up for Mid-State Mile 4 weeks before, not knowing what I was going to do. I hadn't run any trail either, which I didn't know that there's a difference, which is
I
silly,
didn't
but
either.
yeah,
Hmm.
it's very, once you find out. And yeah, we went out to Mid-State, and I ran 50 miles in my first ultra, and I was just kind of on the environment and the people and the community
Yeah.
of just watching so many people push themselves
Mm,
to their limit was pushing me.
hmm.
And it was 2 nights before this that I gave my life to Christ, like, because I'd been listening to a podcast, 3 of 7 podcast with Chad Wright, if anybody knows what that is. But
I
he was
saw your
speaking
I saw
ultra
your
running stuff.
post to him too about the 250. I loved it. And he responded, he's like, way to go, bro.
Yeah, Chad
We don't
is
have to go into
incredible.
that. Man,
Yeah.
he's what a great podcast too. Really
Yes.
just says it like it is.
And at this time, he was in 2023. He was a little more ultra focused than he was faith
Hmm.
focused, which now is kind of flipped, which I mean, I think is great. Like, that's where his mind is. And so I was kind of taking, as an atheist at the time, taking the ultra stuff and leaving the faith stuff, right? It's like, okay, I want to listen to this because I want this side of it, but I'm going to ignore this other side of it because I've been preaching the opposite of what
Yeah.
Christianity is. I've been
Yeah.
living the opposite of what Christianity is. But I still want all this other stuff from this guy. I really like this guy. This stuff, I can just ignore it. It's okay. And he just kept speaking so hard, and it just kept feeling like it was at me. And I
Mm,
remember in one podcast he spoke to just if you're not living for faith, like why, or if you're not living with faith, there's no point for you to be a good person at all. You know what I mean? You have nothing that has to
I've
hold
heard
you
him say that.
together. You don't have to, besides the law, there's no reason for you to do anything morally or ethically okay because you don't believe in an afterlife. You don't believe, there's nothing holding you responsible or accountable to being a good person unless you're a Christian. So if you're not a Christian, you should just start living like a piece of crap. Like this is me paraphrasing, but this is how Chad
Not
talks.
really. Like
But
he
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
says stuff
He's
like
like,
that.
you're pretty much living like a piece of crap. So you need to get your stuff together. If you're a man, pick yourself up. Yeah, and this was like, I was like, this is him in my face. You know what I mean? Like, sure, it's in my ears, but it felt like this guy, Redbeard, was right in front of me like a drill sergeant when I was 18 years old, telling me, this is what you're going to do. This is what has to happen if you want to be the person you're claiming to be. Because I talk about this
So
too.
good.
For a long time, I'm putting motivational stuff all over the place, right? And I believe the words that I'm posting, but I'm not living these things. You know what I mean? I'm not
Yeah.
living what I'm saying. I know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying is true, and I know other people should be applying it while I'm not even applying it a little bit, you know?
Mm,
This was my slap in the face,
mm,
and I still believe even giving my life to Christ the 2 nights before Midstate, I do think some of that was still selfish in the way that I wanted to run well. You know what I mean? That I wanted the benefits of Christianity, that
mm-hmm.
Chad was talking about and that I'd read and things like this. I wasn't like committing myself to a church or anything like that. It's just I want to say I'm a Christian and I'm going to pray some and maybe God will bless me,
Mm,
and
mm-hmm.
I think this is pretty common for people that are new in the faith, that you're kind of doing it for selfish reasons. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think it's necessarily wrong, but if you stay on the path, like you're going to change your flip to where nothing's for you anymore. Like I said, we'll get there pretty much Cocodona, like even before then, but you flip to where you don't care about anything that happens to you anymore, because if you give everything of yourself to Christ, he's going to give you it back and more. Like you don't even have to worry about it. You don't even have to, you're not doing it for you anymore. You just know, like it's just the Holy Spirit's in you. Like it doesn't worry you. Nothing bothers you anymore. Like I'm just going to do everything in
Mm-hmm.
his name and it's going to be okay. Like it might look, something bad might happen. I don't care, like he's doing it for me. This is a test, this is a new trial because he trusts me with it. We run Midstate, like I said, had a great race out there. 50 miles for my first ultra on that course is pretty solid. And a month later, this is where we're chasing that carrot, Donnie, that thing where you're like, why do you want to do that? And this is the 100-mile thing. Like I want to run 100 miles. And somebody invited me to a 24-hour 1-mile loop, flat loop. And I'm like, well, if I did 50 miles on the big loop, maybe I
Mm-hmm.
can do 100 miles on the flat loop. And we go out there and I'm running and we're 40 miles in and my legs are just like rough. Like I'm
Crashed.
like, yeah, they're trash and I don't know why. And because I ran 50 miles at Midstate on all these hills and everything, like my legs should be okay. The thing is that I was running a lot more. Like Midstate, you're hiking and walking and everything, but I don't know the difference in this. I think 40 miles is 40 miles.
Mm,
Anyways, but once again, we get real intentional here with God's numbers and his words, but we're at mile 40, and I don't
mm-hmm.
know the significance of this number yet because I'm baby Christian. I'm not even reading the word. I have no clue of the significance of this. And something in my head I have no credit for this either besides the Holy Spirit, that like if you're running right now, you can continue to run. And that's all it
Right.
was. It's like, I know you're hurting, but if you like, and a lot of people credit this in ultra running to like the steady state or something like that. Everybody
Right.
gets to a point where your legs hurt and you can keep going. I'd never heard this before. I'd never read it anywhere. I'd never seen it anywhere. Just something in my head. The Holy Spirit, right, tells me if you're running now, you can keep running. Mile 41 comes and it's easier than mile 40, right? And we see things like this, the day the light shines through, like I said, the number 40, there's a ton of significance. I think probably half a dozen or more things that revolve around that number to speak the most, obviously. The 40 days and nights of rain, the 41st day is the sunrise, 40 days in the wilderness with Moses, like things like this. These are all
Mm-hmm.
things I didn't know anything about until
Mm-hmm.
late, like weeks and weeks and weeks later.
Mm-hmm.
We run this race. I get into the night. I just remember in the nighttime, all I'm asking, is God for one more loop. We're just doing one at a time, just one at a time. One, sit for 2 minutes, do another one, and I lost a lot of miles in there that I just don't remember. Like I just remember asking for more, just give me one more. And the daylight comes, we're at 92 miles or so. I have multiple hours left. Like we are going to accomplish the goal. But what happened in that race is that the Holy Spirit spoke to me and showed me that God is undeniable. That's what happened to me in that race. And it's so strong to my testimony because once I figured out the number significances and things like this, I could no longer deny that God was real, because even in the month that I'd been a Christian, there was still a ton of questions in my head. Like, am I actually a Christian? Am I actually doing this the right way? Am I just doing this for me? Is this actually even real? Am I going to get made fun of? You know what I mean? All these things. But this moment where something told me something that I shouldn't have known at all, I couldn't have known without it being spiritual, it proved everything to me about faith in that moment, a month of being a Christian. And like, that was the day where I was like, I will never deny God again. I will never deny him
Wow.
again. And yeah,
Wow.
so that's pretty much childhood, endurance, and then faith.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I was drawn as I was listening to you, and that, like, a couple things, like at our church this morning, we're in a series on the Sermon on the Mount, you know, and so a Sermon on the Mount is really not just a sermon. It's the greatest sermon that's ever been spoken, right, from human lips. And it wasn't just from human lips, it was from a divine heart. And it was from Jesus on a hillside when he gets up there. And the first thing he says is to all these poor, rattled people, you know, being completely oppressed by Rome. And he looks at him and he says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." They're like, "No, we are poor in spirit. We're not blessed," you know? And he starts telling them all these things, and his words they don't mix well with culture, you know, at all. And so today it was like all about our words and the power of our words and our integrity, and saying things like, he says, don't take an oath and don't swear by an oath that you're not, basically he's not saying don't ever take an oath. He's saying just don't ever say something that you're not going to follow through with. Like, like if you say you're going to have faith, then actually have faith. If you're going to say you follow Jesus, follow Jesus. Don't be a person that on the outside doesn't match the inside of your heart. Like, Jesus is always after our heart. And that's why I say what I said earlier. When you're on a trail like that and you get to the point where you are suffering and you feel like you have nothing left. I mean, last year when I ran the Quad Rock 50, not the Hard Rock, Quad Rock 50, I ran really well and got to my 40-mile mark, and all of a sudden I hit a wall there, you know. And when I was at that aid station, this guy says, "You just sit down. I'm going to take care of you." And I was like, okay. And I don't even remember the guy's name. And to this day, I actually wonder, was that guy real? Because what he did for me at that aid station, he said, "Do you trust me?" That's the first thing he said. And I said, "I don't have anybody else, so I guess I'm trusting you." And he goes, "Keep drinking your Tailwind. Just drink that only. Don't do any other nutrition. You're nauseous. Like, don't do that." He's like, "I'm going to give you some bone broth, and I'm going to give you some Coke, and I'm going to give you some ginger chews." And he said, "When you take this bone broth, it's going to go into your system." And he said, "I promise you, you're going to come back to life in a second. It's just going to start coming back to life." And that's what happened. Like, it just happened like that. And what it teaches me is that what you're saying is very true. It makes you become the person that you really are. And then it puts you in a place of dependence, you know? And I love the number thing, because I have the same thing with numbers. I got a tattoo on my arm here, and it's actually a number 7. You can see it, but it's unfinished, because the 7 is a number of perfection. It's a number of all kinds of things, number of creation and all those things. It's my wife's birthday. It's my son's soccer number. It's all these things. And one guy even told me, he goes, "Well, it's a good thing you got all those numbers out in one tattoo, so you don't have to keep sinning and having more tattoos." He was joking. But
Yeah.
But it's crazy how in weird moments like that, what you were just saying, like, God can speak to us in really ordinary spaces that we would never connect in any other way. And for you to connect with that number 40 in that moment and just go and have no background whatsoever of faith, no idea of the number 40 and the significance of that, you know, 40 days in the wilderness, 40 days of fasting. Yeah. What a powerful, powerful thing. And to say, I don't need empirical evidence for faith.
Right.
And it really wasn't. It wasn't like you saw Jesus in physical form. It wasn't like, you know, you were holding the Shroud of Turin or something. It was like it was God actually met you in your own space of suffering, in your own time, and he connected dots that you would have never connected. It's just a powerful, powerful story. So cool. So Yeah, you got something else? You got something else in there that you want to get off your chest or share?
No, I mean, it's just from then everything was like gratitude, and at times I'd lose it and then I'd get knocked
Mm-hmm.
right back down. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
also just, when you start to inflate yourself, above inflating
Mm-hmm.
God, like I think that's as soon as like Satan can step in and like really grab a hold of you.
Mm-hmm.
And then just becoming like self-aware and like reeling yourself back in.
Mm. Yeah.
And that's hard to do, but I won some races and that like put me in this weird pedestal for myself again, and then I had to bring myself back down. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. For people that listen to this, because not everybody that listens to this knows what the Cocodona 250 is, or
Hmm.
like may not even know, kind of like what you and I knew years ago when we just started running. I got into running because one of my friends was an ultra runner, but he was running 100-mile race to raise money for mission trips. And so he asked me, he's like, "Do you want to run with me?" And I was like, yeah, I would love to. And he's all, "Well, I need people to run with me. I'm running from," at that time, it was Wichita, Kansas, to this tiny town called Haviland, and it was 100 miles. And he said, I, I just need people to run with me and keep me company and that type of thing. And I said, "Yeah, I'll do that." And I ended up running, and I thought I would only run like 10 miles or something like that. And I ended up running 42 with him. And he looked at me and he said, "This is what happens when you actually run with a purpose and not just because you're running for yourself." He's like, "If you run with a mission in mind, or even something that God is saying to you or speaking to you in the moment, you can go so much further." And I love how you put that into that same context yourself, is that what you can do by the Spirit is so much more than what you can do just by the physical side of your life. And so for people that don't understand like that full on experience of what the Cocodona 250 is, can you describe what something like that actually does to a person physically, mentally, emotionally, and what it did for you spiritually? I mean, we're talking 250 miles. And what people also may not know too is there is a lot of walking. There is a lot of, it's not, and I think that was the hardest thing for me. Like you just said, it was like, I was running an 11-minute mile. I was like, I thought I'd never run that slow in my life. And, and if you're on Strava, you tend to look at people's paces more than you look at just their distances or whatever it is. And when you get into ultra running, it's about accomplishing something more than it is a time, even though Rachel Linterkin broke the
Yeah.
record for that race by many hours. Was it 5 hours or something like that? Like,
I think
I don't,
3. Yeah, I
was it
think
3?
3 and some change. Yeah, incredible. Yeah, she's nuts. But
But
yeah,
what is it?
something
What it
like
physically,
Cocodona.
yeah, physically, mentally, emotionally, but especially spiritually, what would you learn with that?
Yeah, physically, I think it's hard to even grasp like if your body can do it, right? Like, so wrapping your mind around what you're about to do seems daunting is the right word, but it seems like impossible. I think that leading up to it, I think that I was more expecting myself to fail than anything else.
Well,
Although
Chad Wright told you that.
yeah, he did.
I
He
love
did.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, Chad,
He literally said,
you're not gonna make it,
your
buddy.
question that you put into the show was, what do you say about the Cocodona 250? And he's like, "Yeah, don't do it. You're not going to make it."
Yeah.
I
And that's
just,
intimidating coming from a guy like that. And his documentary will scare you too on the Cocodona. Like, I mean, he struggled.
yeah,
Chad finished nearly 10 hours after I did, and he's a very tough guy, a Navy SEAL. He'd done multiple 100-mile races. And like, he explained that this was 5 times harder than a 100-mile race. And that was
wow.
also my peak was 100 miles. The most I ran was 100. So there was a lot of unknown. Mentally, it was just there was a ton of anxiety until the week before, and I talked about this recently on Instagram, but when I wrote some things in my journal and I just was doing some introspective thinking and I was trying to think of how to say, like, if somebody asked me with a video camera, like, who are you doing this for? You know what I mean? I
Mm,
wanted to be able to answer that in a motivating way, in a truthful way, in a good way. And I remember just thinking, like, I want to do it for people like me that work 40 hours a week, that maybe also have a small business that put in the work after the work. I want to do it for the people who can't, the people that have lost their lives, the people that are deployed in our military service, the people that live in third world countries that aren't even able to And
Mm,
this is all going through my mind, this is what I would want to say. This interview in my head like flipped and it became like an interview between me and myself. And it went like, so who's it for? And
mm,
something in my head, like I couldn't even think long enough to like come up with the right answer like I was doing before. Because I was trying to come up with the right answer, what sounds good, what looks good, what PRs well. And
mm,
the first thing that came to my mind was not me. Who's it for? Not me. And
mm,
like I was at work and I almost just lost it emotionally in that moment because I think it was the first time that I was legitimately going to do something that I didn't care what it looked like for Dylan Ledbetter at all. Like
mm.
I told my girlfriend, it's like I almost wanted to remove my name from the bib because I didn't even want to be a part of the race. Just like,
Yes.
just use me. You know what I mean? And this is what we talked about earlier, where like it could be for something like you're the machine, right? Like that's all I wanted to
Mm,
just be the vessel. That's it for
mm,
anybody, for Jesus Christ, number one. But for
mm.
anybody that can't do it or doesn't think they can do it, that's what I want to represent in this. And this is a week out, and this is my dream race for 3 years. Dylan wanted the buckle. Dylan wanted to go to Cocodona 250. Dylan wanted to tell people he did Cocodona 250. And we're a week out, and now Dylan doesn't even want his name attached to the race anymore. And it was like, it was so powerful for me because I've never lived like that, I don't think. I don't think I've purely ever lived like that until what was about to become and is now my greatest, physical accomplishment of my life, and it
Yeah.
was just, and I was able to use this, and this has to be, the Holy Spirit obviously working in me. And then as soon as that happens, I meet Cam Haynes. Cam Haynes
I
shares
love
stories
it.
with me. Cam Haynes shares my posts. Cam Haynes follows me. Chad, he follows me. He shares my social media blows up throughout this race. And I have to think it's only because I finally fully submitted
Wow,
myself,
that
like
is
because I've been
so
working on my
good.
social media presence for years now and trying to put out good content and good reels that'll motivate people and do the right thing. But in the week of me like not even me, the inner me, whatever answered the question, not me, whatever that was, right?
Yeah.
The true
Yeah.
me, that is now what's receiving the blessings because that thing had to come forward, is what it felt like to me. None of this would have
Yeah.
happened the way that it was going to unless I would have submitted myself. Like, sure, maybe I would have completed the race. All the other stuff maybe happens, but it seemed like without that, we don't ever get the effect that we have now,
Wow.
and that was just, and it carried me through the race. I remember just pulling into my aid stations and my crew, I have a binder for them and they would read a Bible verse every time we came in. It just had something to do with, front part of the race and middle part of the race and end part of the race. Each Bible
Hmm.
verse had something to do with that. And we were just talking like, hey, you're the vessel. Every step, in his name, every step closer to Flagstaff, like, and it is just so motivating to just, and I didn't run with a lot of people because I didn't want to, I wanted to be with God as much as I could out there, and my
Yeah.
pacer's huge help. But the most emotional video that I made was the one where we had a stretch from about mile 177 or so to I think 192, something like that, about a 15-16 mile stretch where you can't have a pacer. And I just really felt the spirit with me that whole way. And this is where I was repeating what you were talking about. I just, if what I was repeating is I was thinking of my past self, and if Jesus died on the cross for my wretched, sinful self, I can move my body across this finish line to say his name. And it was just over and over and over. Cause like that's all I could think about. Like you have nothing close to literally sacrificing yourself for people that are not worth it. You cannot do that, Dylan. So all you're going to do is move forward.
Mm.
That's it. That's your goal. That's your task. That's what he wants you to do, and you're going to do it. And that was it. And it's just, like I said, even if you don't have the traumas like I do to call back to like to my mother or my friend or whatever, if you're a
Yeah.
Christian, you call back to Jesus's crucifixion, you'll move forward. I promise you'll move forward. When you
Yeah.
picture the crown of thorns, when you picture them carrying the cross the quarter mile that he had to and being whipped and broken down, and you'll move. I just promise, and this was the first time that I'd called to anything like that in a race. I felt
Yeah.
gratitude. I felt grace. I felt the Holy Spirit. I spoke to God, but to understand, what that was, what Jesus did for us, it was a motivator that I'd never felt before.
And it's so fits into the framework of your life in general. We know that in the military that Nobody's left on the battlefield. You are there not for yourself. You're there for your country. You're there for the guy next to you. And there's so much that's taught in that. And even I love the fact that all of that was speaking to you in a way that was way forward. Like God was doing something then that he knew he was going to be doing in you now on a race for Cocodona 250, like what he would speak way back in the day when you doubted and you were like, you had nothing to do with God. You started looking at these scriptures and reading the Old Testament and going, gosh, these are a bunch of myths and fables. And I get it. I actually understand why people would say that. I mean, when you start thinking about, Moses parting the Red Sea, you're just like, really?
Exactly.
Like, come on, seriously? Like, is that really what happened? But then when you start to see the dots connect miraculously in your own life, then you can't deny it. As the psalmist says, oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. It's like, if I've tasted a really good steak in my life, it's not like I'm going to go wake up the next day and go, gosh, what did I eat yesterday? Yeah, I don't even remember. I can't remember. Oh, yeah, it was a medium rare ribeye. So good. Like, you can't forget it. Like, if you know Christ, if you've met Christ in the sufferings of your own life, how do you go back on that? Like, there's just no way you can go back on that. And
no,
I love the fact that you are using this, because I thought that I was the only crazy one that was saying stupid stuff like that on the trail while I'm out there running. It's like, man. And I would say that to some of my non-Christian running buddies, which that's who I run with. I run with guys that not necessarily follow my same faith. And I tell them these stuff and they're like, oh my gosh, seriously, Donnie, there he goes again. He's preaching again, and it may sound foreign to people that don't have faith, but I can't explain it any other way. And then when I heard you explain it, it was so good.
Yeah, there's just something in the sacrifice too, and I think that a lot of like what we talked about earlier, like why are you running 100 miles? Why are you running 250 miles? It's like if Jesus sacrificed his life for us, like I can sacrifice my comfort to do something great in his name.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that's what we're
Right.
doing. We're sacrificing comfort, right? Yes, it would be easier to sit on the couch and eat potato chips. Like, yeah, 100%. It would be easier to not run 200 miles. But like I'm willing to sacrifice that comfort so that I can speak to somebody to move them.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole thing. Like I want to move you to faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can I do that? I can say words all day long like I did before, right? I can write the motivational stuff on my Facebook wall, right? And not even live it. And people will eat it up, right? But let me prove it now. And now, how does it look like? Now, what do the seeds look like? The seed, they're growing. You can see it. You know what I mean? You're not just hearing it, you're witnessing it. I'm just gonna show you, right? Like for me, it went from I'm gonna say it, I'm gonna write it. You know what? I'm done with that. I'm just gonna show you. Like I'm just gonna show you. And what's funny is when I show you, like in those actions that I'm doing, that's when the real stuff is coming in anyways. Like when you talk about like when I go run without the headphones, every race I don't run any headphones at races because I'm learning things out there the entire time, and I talked about this yesterday or today, whenever it was, but I want to be a master of adversity. That's the other thing that this gives me. And faith gives you how to be a master of adversity, right? Instead of, I think so many people are slaves to adversity, right? That when it hits, it becomes your scapegoat to say, oh, I couldn't do this because X happened. And I don't ever want that. I don't want a single excuse for anything. So when the adversity hits, it's like, how do I move through it? And that's it. That's the first question. It's not stop and feel sorry for myself. It's like, okay, the thing is hitting. I have blisters. What do? We lance the blisters. We apply the ointment. We put the KT tape on. We put the sock and shoe back on and we go forward. Would it be easier to say, oh, I stopped running because I got a blister? Sure. People would understand. Blisters hurt. You know what I mean? But like my mind doesn't work that way anymore.
Yeah.
Same with Jesus. How easy would it be for Jesus to have just collapsed and not taken the cross and not died for us? How easy would it have been? Very simple, very easy. But he had a mission. He had a mission that was greater than him. And that's what I'm trying to do is like everything is greater than me. Any moment in any accomplishment, like that's why I feel like I have to finish it, whatever that looks like. And sometimes finishing it is failure so that you can tell a different story, a different lesson. But, and that's something also coming into Cocodona that I journaled was, God, this is something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm afraid that you might give me failure so that I can learn. Like this was something in my head, like an intrusive thought that I think that I might fail this race because you have something better for me, And that was so, will I be able to accept that? This is something I'm spending thousands of dollars on. This is something I've dreamed about. This is something I've trained for forever. God, if you give me failure in this, like, please give me strength to accept
Mm,
it and work through it, because I'm really scared of that failure. But then, so weird, Donnie, because then a part of me almost wanted me to fail it because maybe the next thing's even better, right? Like, I don't know. I didn't, right? I didn't fail it, and everything has come together, and God's blessed me, and He's continuing to bless me and bring me on podcasts like this and stuff. But sometimes I think that I'm searching for the failure because I know that
yeah.
God has something great in that. When, a lot of people go, you're shaped by how you react to your failures. In this one, like, I'm struggling. How am I shaped in my accomplishment, right? How do I react to this? Because I could just ride this out. I can make Cocodona 250 my personality, and you know what I mean?
Yep.
Never do anything harder again. Now I have to react to an accomplishment, that seems like the greatest thing I could ever do. So now I'm just asking for God for, some wisdom in that, and
Yeah.
maybe this is it, speaking it, talking
Hmm.
about it. And that's why He gave me the wisdom on the trail, the things to think about that I did so that I can share them. And that's what moves me in my next step. But
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah, it's
fun.
like even in Jesus's words, when he tells people like it's much harder for a rich man to follow God, like that's less about money and it's
Hmm.
more about influence and success. Like it's so hard. Like, and the reality is like, if God's going to give you a voice, if God's going to give you a platform, if God's going to let you do hard things, it makes sense that He's going to help you accomplish those hard things if He's going to get the glory, at the end of the day. But it is easier to give Him the glory when we fail, It's much easier to say, yeah, I failed, but man, to God be the glory. That sounds so noble and so great, but it's so hard to say it and that's what I appreciate about your voice. Like, I feel like I followed you a little bit before that, but not much because the algorithms were leading me to you. And that's because of your voice of faith and your ultra running, and somehow paths are getting crossed because of those things, right? But what I loved more about what you accomplished is how you spoke of those accomplishments when it was all over. You still wore the hat. You're wearing it. You're wearing the shirt now. You're talking about your faith, and you're not talking. I mean, we know this in ultra running community. Like my wife says the same thing. She's just like, okay, you go out and run a 50 miler. And after that 50 miler, you're going to get a coffee cup. What's the point? It's like, why is the coffee? Because it's not about the coffee cup. It's about the community. And it's about like accomplishing things that you never thought you could. The goal is not even the belt buckle, like you said, even though I think I would love to have a belt buckle someday. But my wife even said then, she goes, you're going to run 100 miles and get a belt buckle? That's stupid.
It is, yeah.
It kind of is stupid, really. I mean, it's just kind of dumb. I don't know who made that up, but that's what makes it cool, too. And at the end of our life, like I look at it and go, okay, what's faith going to accomplish for me? It's not notoriety and fame. Like, I've been a megachurch type of pastor. I was in one in Sacramento. I'm in a smaller church now, and I can honestly say I want eventually be the guy who's sitting at the back of the room when the church really does grow. And I'd love to be the person at the back of the room when somebody walks in and says, hey, where's the pastor? I don't know. We're not sure where he's at. There he is. He's back in the corner with his wife. And that her and I would be sitting in the back corner saying, we got to be a part of this.
Yeah.
We got to be a part of this. That's the voice I hear with you is, well, I got to be a part of this. It's not about meeting Cam Hanes. It's about being a part of what Cam Hanes is speaking and what he's trying to do. What few of those racers are doing. There's not a lot of them out there that carry a lot of faith and are proclaiming their faith with their running. Chad Wright's one of them.
Mike McKnight, I talked to him a little bit about Jesus. Michael McKnight, he's like one of the king of 200s. Great.
Yeah. And Sally McRae has a strong faith. She went to Bethel or Biola, and
she almost whispered to me on Sunday before the race. I wore my hat that said "Make Jesus First Again," and like we got a picture together. And then she's like, "Hey, I love your hat," And I was like, "Thanks, Sally."
Yeah. And sometimes sponsorships cause that to go a different way. And I just hope, like, maybe if there's ever a day that a sponsorship happens for you, I don't know. I hope it's something that you're still able to proclaim who you are, like
I don't think I'd take it if it wasn't,
I know. And I
I
can
just don't
tell
think there's
that.
any way.
Right. And people ask me, they're like, why are you doing a podcast? Like, you've not really done anything big in the ultra world. And I'm like, no, but I see so many parallels about faith and human endurance. And, James, the half brother of Jesus, says, consider it pure joy when you fall into temptations and trials of many kinds, because the testing of your faith develops perseverance. That's what actually forms us and shapes us. And I feel like what I've learned in life, what I've learned in ministry, what I've learned on the path of doing some ultras and being in running communities for a long time, I feel like there's something to share there that's going to connect with a population that often is not believers, like people that don't have faith, or maybe they do, but they're afraid to share it. And so that's what I so appreciate about where you're going with this and what God is doing. I pray that he continues to just blow up your Instagram, blows up your social media. And I know I even saw that you were thinking about doing a podcast. I'm like, go for it, buddy. Like, really, like, start it up, because I think, first of all, you're an incredible communicator. Whenever bringing somebody on here, it's always like a risk on whether somebody can actually, because it'd be like, okay, what surprised you most about Cocodona 250? You'd be like, yeah, right.
Which they really did, but
It's more technical than people think, it's deserty, it's hard stuff. But one scripture that I keep coming back to in this, and what is reminding me of who you are, is that to them, God willed to make known what are the riches of the glory? What are the riches of the glory of this mystery among the Gentiles, which is Christ in you, the hope of all glory? Ultra running is not about glorifying yourself. It's about understanding that, yes, your spirit, your mind, your heart, your body can do hard things. But ultimately, what I love most about you is that you're not looking for the glory. You're just looking to bring glory to the one who gave you the glory, and that's all we can do. And I love that about you. There is that question. What did surprise you most about that race? And what has surprised you most about since then?
yeah. And like I said, we could talk about the technicality of the race all day. The community of the people is just incredible.
It is.
I think that I thought it'd be a little more cutthroat, like marathon line vibes, just because
Triathlons.
Yeah, just because, I've never been to a race with pros or elites or influencers or anything, and then to show up to a race like that has, dozens of them, and every single one just like willing to take a photo with anybody, you know what
I
I mean?
know.
And having conversations, like you think, pop in and out of photos, but everybody I saw, Cam, Sally, Rachel, like it wasn't just a photo. It was like, oh, how are you? Like they would strike up even a couple sentence conversation, and
Where are
they
you
don't owe that to
from? What do you do?
anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I thought that was really cool. The other thing that just surprised me about the race was just how beautiful the world is, just how
My
beautiful America
goodness.
is, Arizona is. Like I had no idea. They tell you about, certain places like Sedona and stuff. Like, yeah, Sedona is great, but the entire course is incredible, from, even that small little hillbilly town in Crown King that you get to that literally just has like a general store that's like a log cabin. Like how cool is something like that,
Yeah.
that you just get to find after climbing 10,000 feet of a mountain, and then climbing up to Mingus and like all those cool camping areas and the lakes that you go by and the ponds and so just the environment itself, like, just felt like God carved it, and so being able to, and in different environments, like different ecosystems. I went through probably 3 or 4 different ecosystems, from the Sonora Desert up until like the Mingus Mountain area, and then down through like the pastures of Fain Ranch, where I'm just in open cattle land, which is terrible to run across, but like it's just cool. Like you're surrounded by mountains. You seemed like you were in a bowl, and then back
Yeah.
up into Sedona through, which Sedona is just the most breathtaking thing. Climbing, that the Hangover Trail, you're climbing up rocks. There's mountain bikers out there like doing their thing, and like everybody's like just rooting you on, and then up into the pines of Flagstaff and
Yeah.
cresting Eldon, which, geez, that was hard. But like you saw ecosystem after in one run. Sure, it was 4 days, but this is one race. I saw I felt like it was the whole world, you know? And so I think it really surprised me just how beautiful it really is, you know? And that's what running gives
Hmm.
us. I think that's what makes the nights so hard of ultra is you don't get to
Mm,
see the beauty of it, you know?
yeah.
And I got really lucky. I hit Sedona in daytime. I hit the Pines in daytime. I climbed Eldon at night, but Eldon sucks anyways. I don't think it matters at that point. And walking down the streets of Flagstaff at like 2 a.m. with my crew and the roads are just dead was kind of like the coolest thing ever. So I wouldn't like
Yeah.
change the times that I came in. But it's just what surprised me is just the beauty of it. You know, what you felt in your heart that you can't give to anybody else. Like in that
Mm,
race, the experience that the crew gets, that the Pacers get, like everybody that goes to that race and everybody is obsessed with the race before they go. If you're not obsessed, don't go even try. Like I think you'll
right.
probably get swallowed alive. But I was obsessed with it. My crew, these guys all came for free just because they wanted to be a part of the race. I tried to give them
I
money. They're
know.
like, no. They're like, no. Like you're letting me do this with you, you know. And they left with a lifetime experience just without even attaching me or the race to it. They had a
Yeah.
blast. They saw amazing parts of Arizona. They met amazing people. So what surprised me is the impact left. You know that it's so much more than like you said the belt buckle. You know, it's cool, and I could talk about 250 miles running it all day long, but I can never give you the experience of like and I think there's an energy throughout these miles that's given off by what we talked about earlier, people suffering. You know, there's
Mm,
energy in that somewhere
mm,
that like the people keep choosing to go forward, you know, and every step you take is unless you're Rachel, like there's somebody that stepped there before you trying to accomplish the same
yeah.
type of goal that you're trying to accomplish. And that
Mm,
is really, really neat to think about, you know, and then
mm,
somebody behind you is going to step in your tracks trying to get to where you're going, you know, and it's
mm.
just, it's so neat. And I'll probably go back, even though I don't want to. I'll go back in a couple years, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's
I'm sure
probably what
you did
sized
like
me.
what every ultra runner says at the end of a race. I'm never doing that again.
Yeah.
And
I
then the
mean, in
next
the
day
middle
you're
of
on
it
run
sometimes.
sign up looking at options. It's like,
I vowed to
but
take a year off, but at least
no.
from Cocodona, at least from
Yeah.
Cocodona, you know.
Was there ever a point in that race where you were like really close to quitting? Like you felt like you just couldn't do it? Or do
Just
you
at the
feel like it
very
was like a
end.
mindset that you had already put yourself in?
No, I mean, I never had doubted that I was going to finish the race
Okay.
until we were about to crest Eldon, and I had been having breathing issues at altitude mixed with dust, mixed with dry air. Right, I come from about 1,500 feet, right, so
Mm,
nothing. Flagstaff itself is like 6,500, so and you're in there for almost 100 miles of in
right.
Flagstaff, you know, and
Hmm.
so by the time I got to Eldon, the breathing was really labored, really labored. My heart rate was way higher than it needed to be for the effort that was being put in. But it's like, we'll just move slow. You know, you have 19 miles left. It doesn't really matter what time you get anymore. Like, we're just trying to finish, you know? And I get to the last part of Eldon, and it's probably 400 to 600 meters left to climb. So not a ton, you know? And Donnie, I can't breathe. Like, my heart is just thumping. I'm just sitting on my poles, like, just trying to contemplate what to do. Because at this point, like I'm thinking of people like cardiac arrest. Like I'm thinking that if I continue right now, there is a possibility that I die on this mountain. And I
Unbelievable.
legitimately thought this. I was so scared. I sit down, I take my pack off. I'm about to make the phone call. I'm at mile 247, mind you. 247, 248 out of 55, and I have like 30 hours left. You know, like I have a plethora of time, and I am contemplating making a phone call to my crew chief that like I don't know what to do, dude. I think that if I climb this mountain, I might die. Like and then like it's in my head like, is it worth it? Which it should never even be a question that it's worth it, but it was a question, and I'm sitting there. And call it what you want. Maybe I was delirious. This is night 4, but you know, a small white butterfly lands on my pack, and I was like, God's got me. And like that was it. I put my pack back on and I was like, I need a plan, a safe plan to climb this. And it doesn't matter how long it takes. And I put my pack on. I didn't call anybody. I didn't text anybody. I didn't put any music in. And I would just take 10 steps and I would stop and I would take 3 to 5 deep breaths and I would take 10 steps again. And we did this for like an hour in something that should have taken me 15 or 20 minutes and made it to the top.
That is nuts.
Yeah, the first thing I told my crew when I saw them at Buffalo Park was I think I almost killed myself on that mountain. I'm telling, I've never been so scared in my life. And like, I haven't even, I won't tell my family this story because they're always afraid that I'm going to die doing this. And I think that this
I don't want
was
my wife listening to
definitely,
anything like this.
well, I told these guys, I was like, if I was to switch you in my spot and know how you were feeling, I would tell you not to go. Like, I don't, like I said, I don't know why I decided to go still, because I do think that it was the wrong medical decision to go forward, but we're here. And I just did it as safely as I thought I possibly could. But it was the most scared I've ever been. So it wasn't like a thought where like I couldn't make it because like the race was hard. Like I think that medically I was in a compromised position and had to make a tough call. I guess panned out. And then I knew somebody had died in the race, 2 days prior to, and I think it was for some sort of like asphyxiation or something like that. I heard there was like a heart attack or something, and I'm up here with like a pounding heart at 9,000 feet with like 300 feet of climbing left to go. And I'm like, I'm going to have to make a real decision, right? Like a real hard decision. And I need something. And like I said, that little white butterfly, call it what you want, but it was my sign. Like it's what I took as a vote of confidence. And
do you feel like that's going to like not just make you a better runner in life, like not just go out and do harder things again, how does experiences like that, how do you feel like that's going to shape even just your spiritual life or your life in general? Do you feel like that's going to have an effect on you down the road? You look back and go, oh, I can do that. I did that. I can do this. Is that crossed your mind yet? Have you thought through that?
No, but what's crossed my mind is like, how do you accomplish more? Because at that point, like legitimately found what all of us ultra runners, especially when you see people like doing more and more, people that climb Mount Everest or whatever, you're always looking for what is the end of my capabilities, right? Like how close
that's what
can
you're
I
testing.
get? That's what we're all testing, like on the physical side of things, on the personal side of things, is how far can I get? And then like if you're spiritual, then how far can God get me past it? And I think that's exactly what happened in that 400 meters or so, is I was at the end of my physical capabilities as a human being at that point, and God gave me 400 meters just so that I could get the belt buckle and tell the stories without the DNF, and I think it's a great story. If I DNF, I think it's a great race. I think I learned a ton, and but I do believe that was like I said, I've just never been so scared, legitimately scared, on top of a mountain alone at night, just looking for a sign, and I really believe that I found exactly what the hardest thing I've ever done in my life,
Yeah.
And like I said, you ask, what does it impact moving forward? Is just what's next, and because then you look at people like, an Alex Honnold who, is a free soloer, and you're just like, that guy's just gonna die one day doing that, or people that base jump, or and it's like, I don't want that to be the result of anything that I do, but I'm also, there's no way I can physically take a step back, like I just, and I think that's the same mindset that somebody like Alex Honnold has. Like, I'm not doing something that extreme, in my experience, even as close as I thought I may have been to death, is not the same as falling to 3,000 feet on one slipped pinky finger, like it's not that extreme. But I understand his mindset now, being in that situation, because I chose to go forward in a situation that I don't think that most people should or would choose to go forward,
Yeah.
And it's a little scary, to be honest. If I was to speak honestly, like my flesh is scared of it,
Sure.
but
And
I can't
it
stop
should be,
Yeah, I'm glad I am scared, because if I just was like searching for that feeling all the time, we'd probably end up not in a good spot,
Yeah, one thing I
Yeah.
learned in the military when I was, a combat photographer, I was talking about like being in the back of a C-17 when the doors open and we got M1 Abrams flying out the back, and, and then there's, idiots like you guys in the Army that want to jump out of the plane. And these M1 Abrams would be flying right by me on that track. It felt like they were like within inches of my face, or whatever. And I remember I was first learning in my first couple years as like an airman, first class, senior airman, whatever. My boss, who I think he even watches this podcast, and he was Tech Sergeant Hollis Dawson. And he always used to tell me, he goes, "What are you scared of?" And I said, "What do you mean? What am I scared of?" And he was like, I'm like, "Dude, I'm standing outside of a C-17 at, 10,000 feet with the doors open." And he's like, "You're hooked in though. Like you're hooked into the side. Like everything's safe. Like your camera's attached to your gear. Everything's good." And he told me, he said, I'll never forget, he said, "If you want to get the best photographs of these missions and these operations, you're going to have to lean into that fear. Whatever that fear is, you're going to have to lean into it." He said, "If you want to get the best photographs, you're going to have to lean out. Like the door's open, lean out, know what secures you, know what holds you, and just lean." And some of the best piece of advice I've ever been given in life, not just in photography, but in reality, like this is how like fears within faith should never conquer you, They should be the very thing that causes us to surrender more to the Lordship and the power of Christ that is within us. It doesn't make us stupid. I'm not saying that. Like, I think there's a point when like your body has reached its limit. And hopefully in those moments, we're able to say, God's telling me to quit. And what I love about what you said earlier is like, if that looks like failure to the outside, I want to basically use that as a way to proclaim whatever God wants me to proclaim through it, Like you said, maybe I should just fail. Maybe I should try to fail here,
Mm-hmm.
just so I have a better story. And that's not the case, but it's just trusting God with every step that we actually go through in these. And I don't know. I love hearing how like endurance removes distractions or pretenses. And what I mean by that is it doesn't allow us to be inauthentic anymore, I watch all these documentaries of people, whether it's Sally McRae or whoever does these Billy Yang videos, that he's done in the past, all those, I watch those and I come to the conclusion that God gives us hard things in our life to remove all the distractions and pretenses that we want the world to see of us. It's easy for me to put something on Instagram that looks curated and makes me look better than I really am, but the reality is, the best version of myself is the one that is in need of God. Like it's the one that is in need of faith. It's not the person who has it all together. I'm sure you probably like pastors and leaders that are authentic about their faith, not the ones that get up there and preach and they talk about how great of a life they're living or, have tried to teach perfection in some way. And it's not about performance. It's about faith. And faith doesn't require us to perform. It just requires us to live.
Yes.
Man, it's so good to see all this with you. You've been super transparent, and that's what I love about your faith. And it's not surface level. It's deep. It's honest. It's endurance that is shaped by your relationship with God, not just endurance shaped by your physical strength. Although you're fit. Like I looked at your stuff, like you're fit, man. Like I was even looking at some of your stuff and you're like, you strength train a lot, It's not just I think us runners, we'd rather just go out and run. But then we realize our body breaks down when we just run, And one thing I was going to ask you is like, and how this parallels to our spiritual life when we're going through adversity is I always say that when we're facing adversity, what you put into your body, what you put into your mind and your spirit is more important than anything. It's going to get you through. So did you eat real food on this? Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. Because some people, like, I think it was Killian Korth.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't eat real food. He didn't eat like ramen noodles or things like that.
Yeah,
he was just
the whole time, he said.
That is nuts. I mean, it's just crazy. Yeah. What did you eat?
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking in like the gels and bars and stuff in between, like when I'm out. But anytime in an aid station, I'm eating hard food. I'm a big oatmeal guy. Oatmeal has always given me like I think the perfect amount of nutrients, like what you need. There's a little bit of sugar, there's a lot of carbs, a small amount of protein, so it's really easy to digest.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big oatmeal guy. I mean, I ate pizza at Whiskey Row. I had some sliders somewhere else. I had like a spaghetti pasta somewhere else. My watch said I burned 30,000 calories in 4 days. Like it's hard to.
How do you put that many in?
You can't. So it's like got to keep up. So if you're doing it with gels, that's awesome. But I know by day 2, I stopped eating gels because I was getting like the sores on my tongue, which I'd heard was a thing. I had not experienced it, But yeah, by day 2, like it's just the consistency of the gel eventually gives you like some sort of sores. And I was brushing my teeth too. People that don't know, if you're like in ultras and doing multi-day stuff, like oral hygiene's huge because the sugar attaches to your teeth, which then like leads into your bloodstream. I don't know, some sort of scientific situation. So I'm
Rachel
brushing my teeth, I think,
Engerkin
3
talked
times.
about brushing her teeth at the aid stations, and
it's a
people are
big
like, "Why
deal.
are you
Yeah.
brushing your teeth at the aid stations?" It's a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the oral hygiene, there's something that goes along with like how you move. It traps something somewhere. But yeah, I ate a ton of real food. Like I said,
That's
oatmeal's
cool.
like my go-to even for hundreds
Me
or
too.
even backyard stuff like that. I love oatmeal. It's easy, it's fast, it digests easily, ton of nutrients. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't picky on what I was gonna eat. I had stomach issues just right before the last bit, so that's pretty good. You know, like that's
Mhm.
I'm okay with that.
But one of the things you also shared, and I don't want to share it, I want you to share it. You said, I think it was you, hopefully it's you, at each, like with your pacers and the people that were with you, did they supply you with spiritual stuff?
Yeah. They so I have like a binder that, like for my crew, which had like the directions to aid stations and like the next section with elevation and stuff like that. And then there was, I think, 13 crewed aid stations, maybe 14. And so I just had a Bible verse for each one for them
It's
to
so
read. And
cool.
so yeah, so we just like poured that into each other, you know, at the end. Like it was just, I think it was Noah, it was who I had like just assigned to do that. And he'd be like, hey, let's get our Bible verse. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready. You know, we'd all just kind of stand up and listen and, you know, like soak it in for a second and then we'd move. Yeah, I thought it was really important. Everybody on my team like has a faith base, which is really cool. And these guys were from all over the place. One guy I was in the Army with, 2 of them I never knew before until this race. One of them I'd met one time. None of them knew each other at all and ended up becoming best friends. So that's just,
So
you know,
awesome.
God working into all of us. We had such a great cohesion throughout the whole time. And some other crews like maybe had issues and, you know, they're back and forth with each other. My dudes were having a blast and I know that. So it's a big stress off of me as a runner to know that the crew is functioning and having a good time as well, you know.
And that's a big ask. You know, it's a big
Huge.
ask to ask people to do what you're doing because they don't get much sleep either.
No. Well, it's a
Yeah.
whole week off of work too. You know, people don't,
Yeah.
the race starts on a Monday.
Yeah.
So it's not easy to find somebody that can take a full work week off in the middle of a week, you know, just a random week in May. So
Yeah.
yeah, huge.
And the
ask
reason why
for
I
them.
wanted to talk about that was just like how that parallels so much, like with our spiritual life. You know, I think it's real easy when things are good in our life to not rely on God. And sometimes it's easier to, when things are tough, to rely on God. And sometimes it's vice versa. But the reality is no matter what we're facing in life, whether it's good things, bad things, God demands his attention in our life. And where we don't welcome it, he's not there. He just, you know, even though he's there, he's the God who is always with us. He says he never leaves us or forsakes us. But the reality is if our attention isn't drawn to him, we can easily lose sight that he's actually there. You know, I had one kid just tell me the other day, he's like, yeah, he said, I just feel like God's so distant. And he's some guys that I'm discipling. And I said, why do you think that is? And he goes, well, I know why it is. It's because I'm not spending time in the word and I'm not praying and I'm not seeking. And it was like, yeah, so God doesn't leave us, but when we don't, like when we're not pursuing him, we don't feel that presence the way that we need to. And I just found that to be so profound that in a trip, you know, that you just went on 250 miles, you found it very, very valuable, not just to figure out exactly what your nutrients are, what your gels are, what your liquid nutrition might be, how much salt intake. You're probably going through all those metrics and trying to figure them out in your training. And you're training with all that food. But if you're like me, I train also every single day with discipline, spiritual discipline, whether it's God's word, whether it's prayer, whether it's silence, it's Sabbath, it's rest, it's solitude. Those are all applicable in these races. And I just found it so cool to see that that's what you were doing. And I think not only am I proud of you, God's so proud of you. You know, like he is so proud of you as his son, giving him that attention throughout a race. And to people that don't have faith, you're going to think that's crazy until you're in it, you know,
Yeah,
and you
it's just,
rely on it.
yeah. He's just so intentional, and I don't think I told you this yet, but I just recently changed like my scripture practices to the mornings because I
Mm,
was doing it before bed, but I think that I was almost too tired at the end of the day to like get
mm-hmm,
good study in. So now I just wake up and it's the first thing I do in the morning.
mm-hmm,
And I started with John, the Gospel of John. And what's funny about that, I started it just 2 weeks before Cocodona. And if we look at I submitted myself to the race, right? I gave all credit away from me to God, to Jesus, right? And if we look at John, he did the same thing. As soon as
mm-hmm.
Jesus arrived, he gave away everything, every authority that he had was given back to Jesus. And people are like, John,
Mm-hmm.
well, aren't you upset that Jesus is over here doing this? I thought that was your job. And he's like, no, he who comes, after me actually came before me,
Yeah.
and like, you all need to look to him now. And it
Yeah.
was
These are
like,
sandals I can't fill.
right, and it's like, okay, so I'm reading that scripture, just started doing that out of nowhere, this book before the race, and then my mind gives the foresight to say, you need to give yourself up. No longer for you, Dylan. Somebody else is going to take credit for this now. Same as John and Jesus. And it's just like, how intentional can God be? Like, how can I deny any of these things when it's all just right in front of me,
Yeah.
for special.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, God being proud of me. I mean, my buddy, I talked to him like right before Sedona, and it's the one time like I really like broke down emotionally, like in a good way, because I've known him for 13 years, so he knew me as an alcoholic, he knew me as a partier, he knew
Yeah.
me as all sorts of things, and now he knows me as this. And it's the difference now is most people know me as this version,
Mm,
and this version continues to grow, and it's amazing, and I'm happy that people know me as this, and I'm happy they get to meet this guy instead of the other guy.
yeah.
But to have somebody, when I called my buddy, and I could tell he was emotional just following the race. He was back here in Tennessee, he couldn't come, and he just told me he was proud of me, and that was like, it was almost like I heard from myself, because he knows everything that I know about me. Of course, I know more, but he knows all the bad stuff.
Mm,
And it was like everybody there's telling me they're proud of me, but they know just the new me. This guy knew it was like God, right? God knows the old me and who I am now. So it was almost like he was speaking through, like, because I lost it there on the phone. Like, I was just crying and like I couldn't even in the middle of the trail. And my pacer was just like, he's like just rubbing my back. He's like, dude, this is normal. What you're doing is amazing. Yeah, like, he was great. Like he understood it. He's done 200s before, which I'm glad he was the one that was there. Of course, his name is John, of course. And
can't
but
make that up.
you just can't make it up. Just knew that was like it was like what you're saying, where you're saying God is proud of you as his son. Like, that reminded me, that's what that felt like from my
Yeah.
friend telling me that. And I think that's why it hit so emotionally hard, is because not everybody knows what I've been through and what I came from, but God knows, and my buddy knows, and I know. And in that moment, like, that was all right there. And it
Yeah.
was right in my face, and it was amazing.
And that's what's going to endear you to a relationship with God even more.
Hmm.
Is the fact that at least it does for me. I always tell people, like, my wife and I, we've been married since I was 19, and I told her, I tell our church all the time, the reason why I love my wife so much, like one of the reasons, is because she knows absolutely everything about me. She knows my flaws and my successes, and she still loves me, which I can't figure out. And she mirrors the grace of God in my life, like, in that sense. Like, God knows everything about me. God knows more about me than I even know about myself. He knows the bad intentions, even if I didn't know they were bad intentions.
Hmm.
He knows the lies when I didn't actually convince myself that they were lies. They were just half truths, and I can get away with this. Like, the reality is he knows how bad I am. And it's almost like God knows how bad I am as a way of knowing how good he is. Like, he's just like, you're awful, but man, I love you. And I don't know. I am super proud of you, just because I think, a person of faith, we have a connection that there is no other way to explain it. Like, I know somebody, when I walk into a grocery store, I can just tell, like, that person's a person of faith. My dad just had a surgery, and I'm convinced that there were people on his staff that were helping him with open heart surgery, just sitting there thinking, that person had to be a person of faith. And You know, we know that there's a spiritual connection and a bond that we have that I'm sure you had the best crew out there because of that. It's one of the best crews you can have is the people that walk with you in faith through that. But what's next for you?
Yeah,
What's
the Mid-State Mile is
Mid-State?
next.
Do you have anything else on your wish list other than
No.
coming to Colorado and doing the Leadville and doing?
I'm gonna look.
You should.
I'm gonna apply for a lot of the hard stuff next year. The Leadville, the Western States, the Hard Rock. Because
High
now, I mean,
Lonesome.
Cocodona's a
High Lonesome's another.
possible.
That's it's an alpine run. I tried to get in this year. I
Yeah.
didn't get in. One of my buddies is running, so I think I'm going to pace him on it.
Yeah,
But
Hurt 100. I'd like to do Hurt 100 if I could get into that.
my daughter
Be pretty
lives
cool.
right next to that, like
Oh, really?
literally 15 minutes from the race course.
So if I get in, I'll call you to crew because you got a reason to go out there.
Yeah, I might just sign up for it with you. I don't.
There we go.
It's
Whatever
so
works.
weird. You even said that because I just told my daughter on the phone the other day. She's like, "Dad, when you coming out?" And I said, "Probably January, February sometime to do the Hurt 100." She goes, "Come on."
Yeah. No, I just marked my calendar with all those lottery entries. So
Yeah.
we're gonna put in for them and see what happens. But
Yeah,
yeah, no, nothing
hopefully
else.
you don't get like 3 of them in 1 year. Then you're going to be out of money.
Yeah, probably. We'll figure that out though. You know, that's
But if you
okay.
do
That's okay.
get in anything in Colorado, please consider using my crew, my people here that I know too. Like we'll do whatever we can to help you out. Even when I ran Quad Rock, you know, like you said earlier, you're running with all these elites. I was running Quad Rock last year and David Roach set the course record on it. And he's so amazing. Like passed me up twice on that course because it's a loop. It's a
Yeah.
reverse loop. He passed me twice, and both times he's like, "You're awesome.
Yeah.
You're
He's
awesome,
crazy.
man." And he said it to every person, like every single person that he was running with. And it was just, it's a cool community. So any way that I can help you or support you in that, if you come to Colorado, we'd love to have you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take a look. I'm looking for something in like August, September timeframe, probably. I'm gonna need a break after Mid-State. So
I do think you're probably, as God continues to build this with you and for you and through you, I think you're going to have an influence and a voice that, you know, you may not need Donnie Hinshaw in Arvada, Colorado. I'm right up against the mountains, but you know, you might have some other people that are in your life that you can lean on, and that's okay too. But it's hard to run into people that have such a profound faith like you have, and I'm just grateful that I have your voice today and get to hear your story a little bit. So appreciate you being on. And kind of as I close out here, though, I just want to tell everybody thanks for listening. And if you want to follow Dylan, I'll put all of his social media connections in the show notes. If he starts a podcast, I'll promote that as well and get that out there for you guys. But follow Dylan, and don't follow Dylan because Dylan is Dylan. Follow Dylan because Dylan loves Jesus, and his hat accurately said it, you know, make Jesus first again. You know, I just loved that. I just thought it was so cool. But grateful that you guys have joined us today to listen to this conversation. I hope it encouraged you. And if it did, like it, subscribe to it. Give me a thumbs up. I don't know. Send me an email, whatever it is. And remember that the life that actually you're living right now is the life that's actually forming you and transforming you into the person that you're becoming. So with that, I would say, be intentional, but be full of grace and mercy to yourself, and let God love on you no matter where you're at. And look forward to the episodes ahead, and just hope you're enjoying the podcast. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Dylan. So appreciate you today. And thanks for being on the show.
yeah, thank you, Donnie. Thank you, listeners. Just let go and let God, you know.
Amen. If you shut things off, don't shut it off yet. Do you have a life verse, a verse that you just like hang on to with everything? Or do you have like 100 of them?
Yeah, I have too many, I would say. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I know that one of the big ones, and I can't quote the whole thing. It's like Ephesians 4:22 through 27 that speaks through like us being made new, you know, in the way of Christ. And it's pretty long. Yeah, you could pop it up if you want. I've got it somewhere. Yeah, Ephesians, I think it's 4:22 through 4:27. And it was one of the first verses that was ever sent to me when I was on my faith journey from my friend Amy McCullough. And she's like, this sounds like what you're doing, you know, what you're going through and what you're talking about. And I'd never heard it before because I wasn't even reading the word yet. And yeah, go ahead with it, Donnie, if you got it there.
Yeah. Gosh, this fits so much to what I just spoke to our church about this morning, but it's like this section on, the new man. I think this is what you're thinking, 23. I'll start with 21 here. It says, indeed, and this is in the New King James Version, which I don't normally read every day or teach from. I do the ESV, but this was the Bible I had in front of me. It's one of those ones I reference, but it says, if indeed you have heard him and have been taught by him as the truth is in Jesus, that you put off concerning your former conduct, the old man, which grows corrupt according to the deceitful lust, and be renewed by the spirit of your mind, and that you put on the new man, which was created according to God in true righteousness and holiness. I'm going to just stop there because 25 also says, let each one of you speak truth to his neighbor. I love that.
And that's what I have here. I actually have 4:22 to 24. Yeah. You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness.
So good. That is amazing.
That's probably my life verse. And if I was to pick one, but I feel like I'm getting a new one like every week, every day, and I can't cram them in. I gotta work on like my Rolodex in my brain of verses, just being able to pull them out of there. I'll get better.
Yeah. Oh, you will. You will. If you keep reading it, the scriptures will study you as you study the scriptures, and they will become like your right arm or your right leg. They will become part of you. But I do this thing every time I do a podcast called a Selah moment. And the Selah moment, if you look in the Psalms, especially in the Psalms, there'll be a section and then it'll say Selah. And Selah just means pause. It just means pause and reflect. And so I always want to give God honor through my podcast, even at the very end. Allow all of our listeners, whether you're listening on, while you're on a run or you're in the car, no matter what it is, take a moment in your day to breathe, to pause, to listen to God's word in some way, shape, or form. I always like to take these scriptures and just turn them into a simple prayer for the day. So maybe you do this, you get up in the morning, read the scriptures, find one simple passage, breathe in part of it, and exhale the other part of it. So I'm going to use this part where it says, put on the new man, which he has created according to God, right? In righteousness and holiness. So let's just take a moment to pray and just silence our heart before the Lord. And I will walk us through just a quick little exercise of breathing in and breathing out of that. So as you breathe in and you're listening to this, breathe in these words. Put on the new man. Put on the new woman. Breathe out by saying, give me true righteousness and holiness. Breathe in, put on a new man or woman. And breathe out, put on true righteousness and holiness. A simple breath prayer for the day. Father in heaven, we thank you. Once again, I thank you for Dylan. I ask God that you would continue to bless his ministry, not just his running, not just his life, not just his vocation, but his avocation, his calling, his mission. And I pray, God, that you would make that into a mission and a ministry that cannot be denied by the people who listen. Pray that every mile that he runs, every gel that he takes, every training block that he is in, every time that he has to rest, whatever it is, everything that he does, may he do it in a way that would bring glory and honor to your name. Thank you that he did this with Cocodona. You kept him safe, gave him the strength to cross the line, and now you're giving him the strength to use it as a story to shape not only himself, but other people who may be listening, and may it be a help in their life to help transform them into the image and the nature of you, Jesus. We thank you, Jesus, for being the greatest model in our life of what it means to do our hard things so that others may actually find blessing in them. We praise you. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey guys, thanks for joining me today on the Rhythms and Roots podcast. My prayer is that this conversation helps you stay rooted in Christ and inspired to live out the sacred rhythms that shape both body and soul. If this episode encouraged you, do me a favor, do yourself a favor and a friend a favor, share it, get it out there, and be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss what's ahead, because I'm super excited about where this might be going. Until next time, keep abiding, keep moving, and keep living a life fully formed in the spirit and the mind and the body, and we'll see you again soon.